Taehyung slapped Jungkook in the practice room, but the reason behind it made every member cry. "Don't you ever mention my mother again." Taehyung's voice cracked through the practice studio like a thunderclap in the dead of night. A second later, slap. His hand landed hard across Jungkook's cheek. The room froze. Even the music still playing from the corner speaker seemed to cower into silence. Jungkook stood there, stunned, one hand slowly rising to his cheek, where a red mark was blooming like fire beneath pale skin. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. No one moved. No one breathed. Namjoon stepped forward instinctively, but before he could speak, Taehyung had already turned around and stormed out. The studio door slammed behind him, echoing off the mirrored walls like the final beat of a broken drum, and one chased after him. Not yet. They had been practicing for hours. The usual banter, the laughter, they had all been missing today. Something had been off since morning, but no one could name it. Taehyung had seemed distant, focused, yet somewhere else. His moves were precise, but there was a tightness in his jaw, a tension in his shoulders that no amount of warm-ups could shake off. Jungkook noticed. Of course he noticed. And like he always did, he tried to lighten the mood. "Hey," he had joked earlier, grinning as he pointed out a misstep in Taehyung's routine. "You'd be dancing like that one time you sang in front of your mom, remember?" A soft chuckle came from the corner. Maybe Hobie, maybe Jean. It didn't matter. The moment the word mom left Jungkook's mouth, the temperature in the room shifted. Taehyung's expression didn't change immediately, but his eyes froze. Cold, hollow, and then rage. The slap had come fast. No hesitation, just raw reaction. And now, Jungkook stood there, not hurt by the slap itself, but by the look he had never seen in Taehyung's eyes before. Betrayal. That night, Taehyung disappeared. His phone was off. His location unshared. The dorm was quiet, even when it shouldn't be. Jungkook sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the floor, replaying the moment again and again like a looped video that refused to stop. "I didn't mean to hurt him," he said, finally. His voice barely above a whisper. One responded. Except Jimin, he stood up quietly, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door. He didn't say where he was going, but he knew. Jimin found him on the outskirts of Seoul, at the edge of a long-forgotten building wrapped in ivy and fog. The rusted gate creaked as he pushed it open. There, on the crumbling front steps of an abandoned care facility, sat Taehyung. Hoodie pulled low, arms resting on his knees, eyes locked on something no one else could see. Jimin didn't say anything at first. He just sat beside him. "I used to sit here," Taehyung said quietly, "waiting for her to remember who I was." Jimin turned his head slowly. Taehyung's eyes were wet, but he wasn't crying. Not yet. She had schizophrenia. They called it that. All I knew was some days she loved me. Other days, she thought I was a demon. His voice cracked. She tried to cut herself once. Then me. I was 9. Silence. I never told anyone. Not the guys. Not my dad. Not even myself, sometimes. But when Jungkook said her name, I saw her again. Her eyes. The knife. The blood. He swallowed hard. I snapped. The next day, Taehyung returned. He entered the studio alone, sat cross-legged in the center of the room. The others were already there, waiting. No one said a word. Jungkook approached slowly, unsure. Taehyung didn't look up. "Every time I hear the word mother," he said, his voice low, "I don't think of hugs. I think of sirens, screams, blood on the walls, fear." He looked up at Jungkook now. "No angst, just exhaustion. I wasn't mad because you joked. I was mad because..." He inhaled deeply. "I was jealous." Jungkook's face crumpled, and this time, the tears came freely. "I didn't know," he said, barely audible. "I just wanted to make you laugh." No one moved. No one breathed. And then, Hoseok walked over, sat beside them. Then Jean, Namjoon, Yoongi. Jimin was already their point one by one. They all sat in silence. 7 young men in a circle, bound not just by music, but by pain, by misunderstanding, by something heavier than fame could ever lift. In that quiet, Taehyung finally cried. Not because of what happened, but because someone finally knew, and finally he didn't have to carry it alone. The studio felt different now. Quieter, heavier, as if the air itself carried the weight of what had happened. Jungkook hadn't said much since that moment, since Taehyung's confession. No one had. They returned to practice the next day, going through the motions, but something had shifted. They all knew it. They just didn't know how to name it. After practice, Jungkook stayed behind. The others trickled out, offering silent pats on the shoulder or brief nods. No words necessary. Words didn't work so well these days. He sat alone on the floor, back resting against the wall, eyes scanning the dance mirrors. In the reflection, he looked smaller than usual. Not the golden magne, just a boy who had touched a wound he didn't know existed, and he couldn't let it go that he needed to understand. The dorm was quiet when he got home. Everyone was in their rooms. Jungkook hesitated at Taehyung's door, half open, as if inviting honesty, but still guarded. Inside, the room was clean. Too clean. No clothes on the floor, no snacks on the bed. Just a stack of books, a photo of the group, and a locker cabinet in the corner. Old, metal, army green. Jungkook almost didn't open it. Almost. The door creaked. Inside, neatly folded clothes, a few sketchbooks, a guitar pick hanging from a string, and something wedged into the top corner, got a letter. Faded, wrinkled, unsent, he pulled it down, his heart pounding like it was in a fight-or-flight moment. That on the front, one word, scrawled in ink that had bled from water damage. He hesitated for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he unfolded the letter. Are you still there? Or, is today one of your cloudy days? I miss you. I miss the version of you who sings me lullabies and calls me my little star. But today you screamed at me. You said I wasn't real. You said I had horns. You locked the door and screamed for hours, and I was so scared. I think Appa heard, but he doesn't come anymore. That I want to tell the world about you. I want to show them your good side. The side that feeds stray cats and laughs at my silly dance moves. But every time I try, you disappear again. Will I be like you? Will I scream too one day? Will I forget the people I love? I'm scared, but I still love you. Even on the cloudy days. Your son, Taehyung. Jungkook didn't realize he was crying until the ink began to blur again. He folded the letter back carefully, like a sacred artifact, and placed it where he found it. Then he sat on Taehyung's bed, stared at the ceiling, and whispered into the silence. I see you now. The next day, he found Taehyung on the rooftop. The wind was cold, sharp with spring's leftover chill. Taehyung leaned over the railing, eyes on the city, earbuds in. Jungkook didn't speak right away. Taehyung didn't turn to look. He just pulled one earbud out, not needing to ask why Jungkook was there. I read it, Jungkook said softly. The letter. Taehyung stiffened. You weren't supposed to? I know, Jungkook said, but I'm glad I did. He moved beside him, shoulder to shoulder, no distance left between them. You're not her, Jungkook continued. You're not broken. Taehyung laughed quietly. Bitter, don't lie to me. I'm not. Jungkook turned to face him. You think you're broken because you're scared. But scared people aren't broken. They're just healing. And healing doesn't look clean. A long silence followed. Wind brushed past them, soft but cold. I hated you for a second, Taehyung said finally. When you joked about her, I wanted to disappear. I know, but then I hated myself more. Because I knew you didn't mean it. You were just being you. Jungkook looked down. I always thought making people laugh was how I helped. I didn't realize I was hurting someone who'd already bled too much. Taehyung glanced over at him. I forgive you. Jungkook met his eyes, and I'm sorry. I know, Taehyung said. I know now. That night, the group gathered again in the living room. No practice, no choreography, just them. Friends, brothers, survivors. They didn't talk about the slap or the letter. Instead, they talked about fear, about childhood, about what it meant to be known, truly known, and still loved. Yoongi confessed he hadn't spoken to his father in years. Hoseok admitted he still had nightmares about his debut days. Namjoon said he sometimes wished he could just disappear from being a leader and just be Kim. And Jean, the oldest who always kept everything light, just said, I'm tired of pretending we're okay all the time. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't idols, they were just boys sitting in a circle, trying to be whole again, trying to be seen. The comeback stage was only weeks away. The countdown had begun, but for Taehyung, it felt like time was dragging him backward. Every time the beat dropped and the lights flared during rehearsal, he felt it, panic creeping in like smoke under a door. He'd freeze mid-step, vision tunneling, breath catching to AT first. No one said anything. They thought he was just tired, until it happened on stage. The rehearsal was full dress, costumes, lighting, cameras, everything. The song began. Louder than bombs, echoed through the vast, empty arena. Taehyung stood center left, just as they practiced, but halfway through the first verse, he stopped, just stopped. His hand shook. His chest rose too fast. The lyrics blurred. His knees gave out. He dropped to the floor like someone had cut the strings holding him up. Chaos followed. Staff rushing in. Jungkook sprinting to his side. Taehyung's face was pale, eyes wide, lost in something no one else could see. Jimin held him close, whispering, "You're safe. You're here. Breathe with me." Later that night, back at the dorm, Taehyung confessed. He was having flashbacks, not just of his mother, but of the fear, the helplessness, the nights alone in silence, hiding from the world and himself. "It's like I'm still there sometimes," he said, "even with all of you around." They didn't know what to say, but yoongi did. "I've been through it too," he admitted. "Depression. It's not weakness. It's a wound, just not one people can see." That night, they stayed up late, not as performers, but as survivors, exchanging confessions like secret from a childhood none of them asked for. Then came the interview, a pre-recorded show that went off script fast when the host asked about family. The room went still, all cameras still rolling. Taehyung spoke first. "My mother was sick," he said slowly, "and I grew up scared of love because it always came with pain. But my members, they helped me rewrite that." Jungkook looked down, fists clenched. He felt guilt again, but also something else, pride. Days later, just before the final comeback rehearsal, Jungkook slipped something into Taehyung's locker. The IT was a note. "You said you're scared of becoming her, but all I see is someone brave enough to break and still come back to us that you're not her shadow. Hyung, that you're our light." Taehyung didn't say anything when he read it, but on stage that night, when the lights dimmed and the first note played, he didn't freeze, that he danced. Not perfectly, but fully. And when the song ended, his eyes glistened, not from pain, but from the release of it. The green room was quiet, humming only with the soft buzz of fluorescent lights and the distant thump of a bass line bleeding through the walls. The others had already gone to makeup. Taehyung stayed behind, saying he needed a minute. But it wasn't really a minute he needed. That IT was distance from the noise, from the pressure, from the reflections staring back at him. He stood in front of the full-length mirror, dressed in performance black, chains around his wrist, eyeliner sharp, the perfect image of the idol the world adored. But he didn't recognize the man in the glass. Not today. Not fully. His fingers touched the mirror. "Who are you?" he whispered to his own reflection. Behind him, the dressing room door creaked. "You're not going to like the answer if you ask it like that," came a voice Taehyung didn't need to turn to. Know who it was. Yoongi. The only one who could enter a room like a question mark. Quiet, curved, but impossible to ignore. Yoongi walked in and leaned against the counter, pulling the tab on a can of iced coffee. "You still think you're a lie?" he asked casually. Taehyung laughed once, a breath of disbelief. "I don't know what I think." "Yes, you do," Yoongi said. "You think you're broken. That everyone only loves the part of you that smiles on cue and sings on beat." He took a sip. "But you're wrong." Taehyung clenched his jaw. "You don't know what it's like to be afraid of your own mind." Yoongi stared at him, still and sharp. "I tried to jump once." The silence hit like thunder in a clear sky. Yoongi didn't flinch. "I was 22. Hotel room in Japan. No one knew, not even Imjun. I stood on the edge of the balcony and thought, if I fall, maybe I can rest." Taehyung's throat tightened. "But I didn't jump," Yoongi said. "You know why?" Taehyung shook his head slowly. "Because I realized I wasn't tired of life. I was tired of pretending I didn't hurt." Taehyung sat down slowly on the couch, head in his hands. "I hate this mirror," he said. Yoongi chuckled. "Then stop looking for answers in it. Mirrors only reflect light. They don't show what's real inside." Taehyung raised his head. "Then what does?" Yoongi looked him straight in the eyes. "Pain. The kind you share." That night, During their performance, Taehyung sang differently. Not louder, not cleaner, just rawer. Every note he hit trembled with memory. Every movement carried the echo of every fight he had with himself. The pain didn't vanish, but it didn't win either. And in the final chorus, when the lights turned white and soft, he caught his reflection in one of the stage cameras. For the first time, he didn't flinch. After the show, he found Yoongi backstage, holding a towel around his neck. "I still feel like I'm falling sometimes," Taehyung admitted. Yoongi nodded. "Then fall," he said. Taehyung looked at him confused. "But fall into us." It started with a headline: "The Dark Truth Behind BTS's Taehyung. Family History of Mental Illness Exposed." The article spread like wildfire. Paparazzi shots, grainy photos of the old care facility, unnamed sources claiming disturbing childhood stories, all wrapped in slick tabloid poison. It wasn't just gossip that IT was an invasion WY noon. Hashtag Protect Taehyung was trending, but so was hashtag Taehyung Scandal. Backstage, the members gathered in silence, faces tense as the staff moved around them, pretending not to notice the rising storm. Taehyung sat on the couch, phone face down, jaw clenched. He hadn't said a word in hours. Jungkook paced. Namjoon typed furiously on his phone. Yoongi stared at the wall, and Jimin was watching Taehyung closely. Later that night, when the others were asleep, Jimin opened his laptop. He drafted a letter. Not to the fans, not to the press, but to the truth.t. Oh, whoever thinks mental illness is a scandal. You don't know Taehyung. You don't know what he survived, but I do. I've seen him break. I've seen him rebuild. And if you think being honest about pain makes someone weak, then I guess I'm weak too, that I grew up in silence. I was afraid of being too much, too emotional, too soft. But Taehyung showed me that feeling deeply isn't a flaw. It's courage. Oh, here's my truth. I'm not afraid to be broken. And I'm not afraid to stand by someone who's brave enough to heal in the open. Attack him, and you're attacking me. Park Jimin the next morning, Jimin hit post. The letter went viral, and under an hour, Army rallied like a tidal wave, drowning out the scandal with stories of survival, love, and solidarity. Hashtag Jimin is our voice trended globally. Even news outlets began shifting tone. But the company wasn't happy. That afternoon, Jimin was called in. He returned to the dorm 2 hours later, pale, quiet, holding a sealed envelope in his hand. "What happened?" Namjoon asked. "They're considering a suspension," Jimin said flatly. "Unauthorized statement. Brand risk." Taehyung stood up. "No, I knew what I was doing," Jimin replied before Taehyung could say more. "I'd do it again. You shouldn't have to, but I wanted to." The room was silent. Then Taehyung stepped forward and pulled Jimin into a hug. Not a casual one. A full-bodied, shaking, "I owe you everything" kind of hug. Jimin's voice cracked. "I won't let them shame you for surviving." That night, Jimin's letter was read aloud on national television by a mental health advocate. Donations to mental health centers surged. An open dialogue began. Taehyung sat in his room, staring at the screen, tears running silently down his face. Not because he was exposed, but because someone had chosen him. Out loud. Yoongi hadn't spoken to his older brother in over 6 years. Not since the night he left Taegu with nothing but a duffel bag, a half-finished mixtape, and a voicemail he never listened to. But that voicemail, long deleted, returned in the form of a man standing outside HYB's side entrance, gray hoodie, familiar eyes, a nervous twitch in his jaw. Hyung. Yoongi froze. That IT was him. The reunion wasn't warm. It was a wound torn open. His brother had come not for reconciliation, but for help. Money. And press attention. "I just want to tell my side of your story," he said, voice low. "People want to know who you really are." Yoongi didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch, but he walked away without saying a word. That night, he didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling while the storm outside matched the one inside his head. By morning, the headlines began to swirl again. Suga's estranged family members spotted outside HYB. Hidden drama? Jungkook showed him the screen, worried. Yoongi just stared at it. "I'm not going to run," he finally said. Instead, he sat down in the studio and wrote a new track. A raw, haunting piece. No beat. No bass. Just piano and voice. Hyung's lullaby. In it, He confessed everything. The fights, the fear of turning into his father, the silence he learned to wear like armor. "I never hated you," he rapped in a whisper. "I hated that I still loved you when you left me behind." The song was never meant for release, but Taehyung found it and played it out loud one night in the dorm. The room went silent. When the last note faded, Jin, usually the loudest, whispered, "That's the truest thing I've ever heard." The next day, Yoongi stood in front of the camera and made his first ever personal video message to ARMY that he didn't mention names. But he talked about family, about betrayal, about learning that loving someone doesn't mean you owe them your peace. "I'm not perfect," he said, "but I'm honest, and that's enough for me." The public didn't react with scandal this time. They responded with stories of their own fractured families, forgiveness they were still figuring out, and the bravery of saying no to blood ties that broke you. And behind the scenes, something changed in the group. Walls dropped. Hugs came easier, that late-night talks got realer. And for the first time in a long time, they weren't just surviving. They were healing together. The arena was packed. Lights blinding. Cameras rolling. But behind the curtain, BTS stood in a circle. Not to rehearse, not to hype. Just to breathe, and oh more pretending, and oh more masks. Tonight, they wouldn't perform despite the pain. They would perform with it. Taehyung held Jungkook's hand for a second too long. Yoongi nodded at Jimin across the circle. Namjoon whispered, "Let's show them who we really are." And they walked on stage. The final song wasn't part of the SCD list. That "IT was still with you." Rewritten, rearranged, raw. Taehyung's voice cracked. Jimin cried openly. Yoongi closed his eyes on the final verse, letting silence say what words couldn't. They weren't flawless, but they were real. The performance ended. The crowd didn't scream. They wept. And then they roared. Backstage, no one said anything for a while. Then Jin smiled through his tears. "We didn't just make it through," he said. "We made it matter." Final shot. Taehyung looking into a mirror. This time he smiles. Not because he has to, but because he finally sees himself. And it's enough.